Okay, here we go again. Welcome back to the Body Composition Coach podcast. And the reason I say here we go again on this one is just because this is a subject that I know I'm going to get some stick for, because I always do. And I'm going to explain why. I'll also explain why I feel like that stick is a little bit unjustified. But first of all, before we get to that, you'll notice I'm still filming from my bedroom right now. This is part of the bedroom series. The studio is on hold for a second. that will definitely all come back, but hopefully you're enjoying the info and the value and whatever from the bedroom at this point anyway. But as always, I'll plug it every single time. If you haven't left me a review yet, please do. It goes so far to actually helping us get this podcast out to those who need it. And leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. Every little comment that you leave on every episode that you listen to helps us to get this podcast just that little bit further into the right hands to the people who need it. But look, now that's out of the way, let's get into the nitty gritty. Why did I say that I'm going to get stick for this podcast? And it's because we probably know this because it was in the title, I imagine, by the time you've watched it. But I'm going to talk about Hyrox. Now, nobody at this point should be in a position where they don't really know what Hyrox is. But I will just give a quick background in case you have been, for some reason, living under a rock in some way. So Hyrox is like I think I heard somebody describe it as adult PE. I don't quite agree with that. I think Hyrox is fantastic in so many ways, and I'll explain what ways, because not every way. But Hyrox is basically like an event where you can do it in a pair or you can do it on your own, and it's basically like a advanced, well, not advanced, but like an obstacle course, I suppose, in a way. So you do a 1 kilometer run, and then you do like a station of some sort. So it might be like a rowing machine, it might be a ski erg, it might be farmer's carry, it might be burpees, and then you do another 1k run, and then you do another station, you do another 1k run, you do another station, and you do that 8 times. Usually it takes people, like even the pros, it takes them like an hour or so. For people like you and I, hour and a half, maybe even longer, that kind of thing. So it's pretty challenging, but it is in the vast majority, it is cardio, ultimately. So I'll get into that in a little bit more depth in a second, but the reason I tend to get stick when I talk about things like Hyrox, things like CrossFit, things like Les Mills especially, or like group classes. And I talk about group classes a lot just because of the clientele that I generally tend to work with, because they've been misled quite a lot by group classes. But the reason I get stick for it is because people think that I'm just attacking it. People think that I'm just, for some reason, I just have this vendetta against like group classes and Les Mills and body pump and whatever. Honestly, I promise you that's not the case. And it's the same with Hyrox. Like, I think Hyrox is great. I think it serves a fantastic purpose for anyone who wants to get involved in like a community / competitive environment that is reasonably low skill, but difficult in terms of output. So skill doesn't mean that it's not difficult. Low skill doesn't mean it's not difficult, but like high skill would be CrossFit, where they are doing like muscle ups and handstands and all that kind of thing. That's quite a lot of skill. So the entry level is a little bit higher than, say, Hyrox. So it's like a low entry point. Like anyone can really do it, but it is obviously very challenging for anyone who does do it. But people think that I'm just attacking it, and I just have this thing against it or hatred for it, and I honestly don't. I said it in a post the other day. I will probably do a Hyrox in the next, I don't know, few months or a year or so, just for something different. Have a go at it. But the same with like Les Mills. I probably won't have a go at that. Probably won't do body pump. But the same with Les Mills, the same with CrossFit, the same with Hyrox. It's not an attack. It is simply, I help people with a very particular problem. And the very particular problem that I help people with is body recomposition. I help them to lose body fat, and I help them to build muscle. Those two things specifically. So when I see people who have that specific outcome in mind and they want to achieve that very specific thing, I will always tell you the truth. If something like group classes or body pump or Hyrox or whatever isn't going to achieve that, and I've said it about group classes with Les Mills and body pump and combat and all that sort of thing over and over again, it will not help you achieve that result. It will not. It can be part of a plan that achieves that result. You can implement it simply for enjoyment alongside the things that will help you get the result, but it won't help you get that result. You will not build muscle doing that stuff, not significant or enough amounts anyway, and it will not significantly contribute to you dropping the body fat either. That's done elsewhere, mainly in the kitchen, right? The same is for Hyrox, and I'm going to say it. I'm just going to come out with it. If your goals are specifically to lose body fat and build muscle, Hyrox is probably not the modality of fitness that you want to be focusing on. Simple as that. Now, why do I say that? So I alluded to it earlier. Hyrox is basically cardio, right? So you can view Hyrox in the same way you would view like marathons or half marathons, or how you would view just like rowing for an hour or running for an hour or cycling for an hour or whatever it is. You can view it in the same way. Of course, you can argue it's a little bit more difficult at times and that kind of thing. But it ultimately, in terms of how it affects the body, it's a cardio stimulus. Okay. Now, if your goal is to build muscle, if I said to you, what do you think you should do then? If you want to build muscle, what do you think you should do? All of you, without fail, would hopefully, fingers crossed, would come back to me and say, probably need to lift some weights. Probably need to strength train. Hyrox is not strength training. No element involved in Hyrox. Even like the farmer's carry, which is probably the one thing you could maybe argue is close-ish to strength training. It's not really strength training. It's not. And the reason that this is important is if you want to build muscle, you must be doing the correct thing, or the stimulus. You must be providing the correct stimulus to actually build muscle, right? So if you want to build muscle, you want to lose fat, you're not going to be doing the muscle building side of things in Hyrox. Muscle building stimulus is created from specific strength training, having the correct structure to your strength training, having the correct stimulus from the correct exercises and the correct intensity and the correct frequency and the correct volume. You do not get that stuff from Hyrox. Okay, so now we've got that out of the way. Hyrox ain't going to help you build muscle. But what about the fat loss bit? It absolutely can help with that. But there are some drawbacks and some caveats that you need to know about. Now, in the same way, going for a run can help with losing body fat. In the same way, going on a Stairmaster for an hour can help with losing body fat. But there is a caveat to it. If a client comes to me and their main aim is to lose body fat, I give them some cardio, not loads. Because when you do a lot of cardio during a time where you are restricting calories, or you're trying to lose weight, or you're dieting, your hunger signaling will increase. If you are doing lots of cardio, your hunger signaling will increase and make it more difficult for you to adhere to your diet. So if we're saying that Hyrox is ultimately like doing cardio, lots of cardio, then what we're also saying is Hyrox will directly impact your hunger signaling and just make you that little bit more hungry, that little bit more tired. It will lift your stress hormones a little bit. I don't overly believe that will play a huge role, but it will lift your stress hormones a little bit. Generally, people tend to hold a little bit more water when they do more cardio, which doesn't necessarily mean you're holding more fat, by the way, but you could be holding a little bit more water, which may mask any fat loss temporarily. Again, not long term, but may mask for some fat loss temporarily. So ultimately, you're more hungry, you're more tired, you're potentially a little bit more stressed, but also you might be losing fat and it might be contributing to your fat loss. But because you're holding a little bit more water from the extra cardio that you're doing, you may also end up masking those results. Motivation becomes a problem, application becomes a problem, adherence becomes a problem. You can see where this all kind of ties in. So when we then take Hyrox as a whole, when we're using it, or if you're using it specifically for building muscle or losing fat, it doesn't effectively build muscle. It absolutely can play a role in the cardio element of losing fat, but the main element of the losing fat bit is going to come from you managing your nutrition and being in a calorie deficit. So if it actively makes that a little bit more difficult, I would say that it's not overly great either for fat loss. But again, that depends. If you're able to hold your nutrition together and do Hyrox at the same time, then great. I think my third point would be this. If you're going to do Hyrox, do it because you want to achieve something cool. Like, you want to achieve something you're proud of. You want to achieve like a really impressive goal. Like, maybe it's something you never thought you'd be able to do, or maybe you want to do it because it's fun and you want to do it with your partner or your mate or whoever. Like, do it for the right reasons. Don't walk into Hyrox as like, right, I need to lose fat and build muscle, so I'm probably just going to do like this Hyrox stuff. Like, don't do that. Do it because you want to achieve something cool. You want to push yourself. You want to test yourself, because this is leading to something. Because if you do it for those reasons, you don't want to be in a calorie deficit anyway. You don't want to be doing it whilst you're also trying to lose fat and build muscle at the same time, because you want to fuel performance. And again, that's where nuance comes in, because if you want to do Hyrox and you want to do it well, you need to fuel it well. And this is where we end up with all these cross wires, right? Like, you've started doing Hyrox because you want to lose weight and you want to build muscle. But to do both of those things, they're going to be impacted by how you need to fuel your Hyrox. You need to fuel with high calories, high carbs, whereas that's probably not what you're going to be doing when it comes to your fat loss and muscle building goals and body recomposition goals. So again, it's contradictory. Do it for the right reasons. Do Hyrox because you want to achieve something amazing, fuel properly for it, train properly for it, go and kill it. But if you want to build muscle and lose fat, and you actually want to change your body composition and change your fat and muscle composition, don't do Hyrox, or don't choose Hyrox as the main modality. Do Hyrox as part of a plan, but actually get stuck into a proper strength training program that has been well put together and strategized by someone who knows what they're doing. Get stuck into a well-designed nutrition protocol and program. Get stuck into the what's the word I'm looking for? Like, the complexities around like mindset and developing the correct mindset for building muscle and losing body fat. There's so many other things you can do that will get you a more effective result towards the thing that you actually want to achieve, which is the fat loss and muscle building. So look, I also just want to share a story as well, because it's not that, I talk quite a lot about phasing and how you should go through like different phases in your training. And for a little while, it might be like fat loss, and then it might be a build phase, and then it might be a maintenance phase, and then it might be a performance phase. And Hyrox would fit fantastically in a performance phase. I take clients through these things all the time where, I've got a client called Rachel, she won't mind me mentioning. Maybe she's listening to this. Rach, if you listen to this, leave a little comment on the bottom. But I got a client called Rachel, and she's lost 10 stone, right? She didn't do that by doing Hyrox. We did strength training. She is strong, by the way. 100 kilograms squat. Mental. But, she did the weight loss, so she did the 10 stone weight loss, and completely changed her life by strength training and managing her nutrition, not doing things like Hyrox. But Rachel is now preparing, with my guidance and my help, for her first Hyrox at the end of the year. Now, after all I've just said about Hyrox, you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute. Why is one of John's clients doing it if he's so against it? I'm not against it. Let me remind you of what I said. I'm not against Hyrox. I think it's the modality you can use on certain occasions, but it's not the modality for fat loss and muscle growth. So the reason I'm telling you this story about Rachel doing Hyrox is because she did her fat loss. She lost 10 stone. She completely changed her life. Her priorities are now different. It's not about more fat for Rachel, losing more fat. We're focusing on doing things that she didn't ever think she would be able to do. For example, Rachel has recently walked the Great Wall of China. She couldn't get on an aeroplane years ago. And now she just walked the Great Wall of China. Rachel is also hiking to Machu Picchu in Peru. Again, not part of like her fat loss and muscle building goals, but part of achieving something amazing. And then Rachel's also going to do a Hyrox at the end of the year, right? And it's an amazing story from someone who has lost 10 stone, completely changed her life, and is now applying her newfound abilities to some performance things and some things that are, things that she never thought she'd achieve. And I absolutely love it for her. Rachel's been with me for a long time, and she's a very close friend of mine now. And I'm super proud of her for doing that. But to loop it back to my whole podcast point on Hyrox, she didn't achieve the amazing things she's achieved None of my clients achieve the amazing things they've achieved in terms of body composition, fat loss, muscle growth, because they did things like Hyrox. And before Hyrox existed, like CrossFit, for example, they can have that as part of their plan for enjoyment, for, extra cardio, whatever it is that they, like about that modality. But the reality is, the reason they got the result they did was from some very well-designed strength training protocols, some very well-designed nutrition training protocols, being held to account and working on their mindset. It is as simple as that. So do Hyrox for the right reasons. Do it to achieve something amazing. Don't turn to Hyrox as your fat loss and muscle building thing. And the same thing, I'll loop back round to the body pump situation. I don't hate Hyrox. I don't hate CrossFit. I don't hate body pump. I don't hate Peloton or anything like that. I don't hate any of this stuff. It's all a modality that can be used in the right circumstances. My message is just use it for the right circumstance and use it for the right outcome. Use the right tool. I think I said on Instagram the other day that made a few people laugh. Just because you really fucking love forks doesn't mean you're going to eat your soup with it, right? Just remember that saying when it comes to fitness. Just because you love forks doesn't mean you need to eat your soup with it, right? And just because you love body pump doesn't mean you need to use it for the goal that it's not meant for. Same with Hyrox, all right? So look, thanks as always for listening. As I'll remind you again, any little comment that you think that you want to share about this podcast would be really, really useful. Share it with a friend. Leave me a 5-star review. Let me know what you thought. And of course, if you want some more specific help beyond just turning up to Hyrox and hoping that you're going to get the result that you want, if you want the specific strength training, the specific nutrition that's going to get you to the end result guaranteed, then drop me a message. I'm most responsive on Instagram. Just drop me a message. Tell me you listen to my podcast. Let me know what you thought of it. And let me know what you want some help with. I'm always happy to have that discussion. That's what I'm here for. That's why I got into this industry. So if you need some support, you need some help, drop me a message and I will do just that. And until the next time, I'll see you then.